you believe that we are in an economic war? Please raise your hand if you think we are. This is a general response I get when I speak. How many of you think we're winning this war? Please raise your hand. All right, same response. We are not doing very well as a nation. In every war, there are generals, there are privates, and then there are senators' nephews. And I'll tell you about that in a minute. The generals are in Washington, D.C., and in our state capitals. The privates are you people, the economic development community, that are out on the front line trying to bring jobs to your communities and your states. The problem that most of you have today is that you're not being given the right tools. And if you don't have the right tools in a war, you don't have the right weapons to use, you're not going to do very well. The federal effort has been very weak. You know, my company represents corporations, so we move them all over the world. About a year ago, I had a project, and it was about 800 jobs. It was quite a large project. And we had narrowed the field as we normally do, looking at transportation and labor markets and all the other factors. And we had narrowed it down to, this was a manufacturing operation, to 2 different states. And we had 4 communities in one state, 2 communities in the other state. Well, at that time, we usually are in contact with the project managers from the state. So we'll go down to the state with our client and do the tour of the community. So we did this. So we went to the state and had the 4 communities first. And we fly in the corporate plane, and I've got the CFO with me and the COO of the company. And we get off the plane, and we meet these 2 young guys. And they're the project managers from the state. And we get into the van. I've taken a million of these trips. And now we off to go to the first community. Well, my clients start asking questions about the labor market, about the state, about education. And I quickly realized that these 2 young guys aren't answering the questions. I'm giving all the answers. We finally get through with the second community, and we're stopping for lunch. And we pull up at the restaurant. Now, these 2 guys are pretty lively. They're fun to be with, they just don't have any answers. And I pull the 2 of them aside, and I say, what's going on here? I said, this is your opportunity to shine. This is your opportunity to sell this state and to sell these communities. And you don't have any answers. And one guy says, well, Ron, he says, we've only had the job for a year. And I said, that's plenty of time. He said, but we're only going to have it for 1 more year. And then Tom's uncle, who's a state senator, is going to lose his job because of term limits. So we just thought this was too much to learn for just 2 years. This is a true story. This is what's happening. And we're going to see this happen more and more. Now that we're getting a lot of new administrations in around the country, it's going to make our job very difficult. Because in many states, a lot of the ED groups at the state level are going to be let go, and you're going to be new infusion of people, many of whom have no economic development background at all. And for a period of 18 to 24 months, they're going to be educated. They're going to have to educate themselves. Some will wind up being excellent. Some will be like my 2 friends. At the end of the tour, we pull into the airport, and the 2 of them pull me aside. And they go, you know, Ron, you know a lot of people in real estate, corporate real estate, and economic development around the country. We're kind of tired of this job. Can you help us out? Is there anybody you know we can talk to? And I thought for a minute, I go, perfect guy for you. So I gave him the name and phone number of one of my competitors in New York. They deserve each other. Let's look at the first slide here. This is what's happening here in the United States today. Most Americans see their standard of living diminishing, their incomes eroding, their personal debt increasing, and unemployment and underemployment rising. I frankly get aggravated with politicians who like to blame everything that's happening in this country today on the recession. The recession has officially been over for over a year, but it's a very convenient excuse. What has really been happening is the trends we see today have been going on for over 2 decades. We are constantly told things are going to get better. But I don't see what any states are doing, what the states are doing, or the federal government improving the situation we're in. Frankly, for most states, not all, but most states, their efforts are pretty pathetic. We just had our elections. Did any of you really hear any great ideas coming out of a politician? You know, somebody read my book and sent me an email, told me to go to YouTube and watch an interview that was done with the new governor of California, Jerry Brown, who used to be the governor of California for 2 terms. And he was interviewed on television after his 2nd term ended. Now, at that time, he didn't think he was going to stay in politics. And Jerry Brown, being Jerry Brown, the interviewer said, "You know, Governor, when you first ran for governor, you said you had a plan to create jobs. You said you had a plan to lower taxes." And he says, after 8 years, you never did either one of them. What was your plan? And he looked at the interviewer and said, "Plan? I never had a plan. This is what they told me. That's what the public wanted to hear, that I had a plan." And that's all we heard during the last election, that and negative ads. Most politicians, when you press them, don't have a plan. I talked to a reporter last week in Detroit, and he asked me the same thing. He said, "What do you think of our new governor coming in?" And, you know, he's got a plan for job creation. I said, "He does." I said, "Do you know what that plan is?" And he goes, "Well, no." I said, "You should be asking him what his specific plan is, and I think you're going to find he doesn't have a plan." None of them do. We're told about the wonders of globalization. There's marvelous results for China, India, Mexico, Brazil, Vietnam. But Americans have found that their lives are no better and that prospects for their children are no better either. Our government has dealt with globalization in a disastrous manner. And the brunt of this is being felt by the middle and lower classes in the United States. So how is this mismanagement of our economy impacting you? America is facing a new world order. Last summer, China surpassed Japan as the world's 2nd largest economy. Goldman Sachs and the World Bank are now predicting that China will surpass the United States in 2025. That's 15 years from now. When I first started writing this book, the prediction was 2045. In a period of 3 years, it's dropped to 2025. China's growth is not just about cheap labor. About a year ago, I talked to one of my neighbors, and this guy is the chairman of the board of a major conglomerate of manufacturing companies. They have operations all over the world. And I asked him about his Chinese operations, and he says, "You know, Ron, 15 years ago when we first went to China," he said, "we had a very difficult time. The employees were not good employees. We had to bring in plant managers for the United States. We had to do all our design and development work here in the United States. But he says, today, those plants are the best plants we have anywhere in the world. He says, the workers are the best. He says, our plant managers are the best. And he says, we're now doing all our design and development in China. Things have changed very quickly.